you for being here today. Today's class is about lactic fermentation, and we're going to make sauerkraut and also a dish that I love to make when I have sauerkraut made out of sauerkraut, coleslaw. So I'll go shortly about some information about lactic fermentation, so what that is actually. So it's ancient technique from China and got adopted to Europe. And so what happens is beneficial bacteria break down vegetables and they create acids. In some cases also alcohol. If you're usually fruit does have a lot of sugar or starch, then bacteria and yeast will also create alcohol, but it's not happening with cabbage usually, or just minimal, really tiny amounts. They mainly produce lactic acid, and that acts as a preservative. And I wanted to show you this phylogenetic tree of life, where it all started on Earth, and then developed into bacteria or other microorganisms like archaea, extremophiles, or eukarya, where we are here, the animal kingdom. So without microorganisms, we would not be here. So we actually, unless you believe in the evolution or the story from the Bible, that's fine, but this is what I believe in. So we actually have so many, even if you believe in the story of the Bible, but still, we know that we have so many bacteria, viruses, a lot of, which we call microbiome. And we would not be alive, or we would not have developed like we are now if we didn't have any bacteria and viruses. So beneficial microorganisms are also called probiotics, and they actually ferment complex carbohydrates, and they turn them into short-chain fatty acids, and they are really beneficial for your gut epithelium, and also they contribute into the pool of essential amino acids, and they're also responsible for the synthesis of vitamins, especially vitamin K. There's vitamin K and vitamin K2, so they synthesize vitamin K2. So they support a strong immune system. But I don't want to go over that so long with you. I want to make food today. So vitamin K2. Vitamin K1 you find in leafy greens, kale, parsley, broccoli, lawn. But there's also vitamin K2, and it's produced by bacteria, preferably in your gut. But if your gut microbiome is not healthy, that can be potentially not working well for you. So fermented foods, since it has a lot of bacteria, they actually contain vitamin K2. So fermented foods like natto, sauerkraut, natto has the most vitamin K2. And vitamin K2 is very important for blood clotting, bone health, but also for arterial decalcification, especially with K2. So in our modern world, we are all sterile. We don't want to get in contact. We are afraid of diseases, especially these times. But we cannot avoid being in contact with nature and other people. So that actually makes us sick. All these pharmaceutical drugs, the sterilization. So diversity is actually very important for us. So that I'm not saying that the viruses don't drive the disease or the bacteria. Of course you get sick and then you have a bacterial infection or viral infection, but there's always a cause why you get sick in the first place. And the cause, usually even the NIH acknowledges that a healthy microbiome consists of a variety of viruses, bacteria, and even pathogenic bacteria on the skin. Pseudomonas aeruginosa, which cause usually pneumonia or a yeast infection. We have that on our skin. That's totally normal. But what causes disease? It's what you feed your body. You're not only what you eat, you're also what you feed. So either you support the bad bacteria or the good bacteria. We call it bad and good, but actually they're all good. The bad, actually, what we call bad, they take care of the trash. They just get rid of trash. And if you feed your body trash, they will get rid of it. So we eat fruits and vegetables because this actually benefits the bacteria that we want. And they like vegetables. They don't like meat or dead flesh. Bacteria that like dead flesh are the pathogenic bacteria and viruses. So we actually going to make the next one. Like the fermentation. So we have cabbage here, and but you can also use other vegetables. But if you start with fermentation, I would recommend using cabbage because that's the easiest. I'm gonna use gloves this time because they fell, so I'm a little bit injured. Okay, so, and what we need is, you actually only need a knife, but it's really nice to have a mandolin, so you can slice it really quick. And if you use a mandolin, I would really recommend using some protection. Either there's an adapter, so you don't touch it directly with your hands, or those are gloves that are made of HDPE, and they are cut resistant. So that's really important with this mandolin because it is really sharp. And then either you can use red cabbage or white cabbage. I would start with white cabbage because I think it's even easier to ferment than the red cabbage even more. So what else do we need? Just clean this up a little bit, and definitely buy organic cabbage. Preferably from the farmer's market. Then it doesn't even need to be certified organic, I don't think. But from small farmers, just make sure that you don't have any pesticides on your cabbage, because we don't want a sterile cabbage. We want the bacteria on the cabbage. The beneficial bacteria already are on the cabbage. They're actually all around us. They're on my skin, on your skin, and they are also on the cabbage. And they don't grow really here right now, and they don't, otherwise they will, it will rot if you just leave it. But now the environment is just not right for them. So the cell walls need to get broken open so they can actually penetrate the inside of the cabbage and eat it. Now they can't really eat it. But they are still here, they're just sleeping, so to speak. And then, see, that's the favorite spot. Okay, I'm just gonna slice it. And it's with a mandolin, it is really, really quick. It's a little bit messy, but it's okay.
You can get that glove on Amazon, can you? I need that glove.
The mandolin?
No, the glove.
Oh yes, I bought them from Amazon.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in my shopping list, I can send you my list of things where I get my tools and also my foods that I don't get from the farmer's market. Usually, most of it I get from the farmer's market here, especially in California. So,
I know I was scared of mine.
Yeah, and now since I have this job, it's like I just do it and I talk and I don't even care. You know, it's so much nicer.
Exactly. Oh yeah, that'd be beautiful.
Yes, they are also really expensive. This one is from the kitchen, so I don't even have my own mandolin. When I do my cabbage, I use this here sometimes. Good. Or I just use the knife, but then it's not that nice and fine. It is a little bit messy, but you know, it's just cabbage and it's so easy to clean up after. Or even if you don't clean it up and you have it on the floor, it's just not like bacon. You know, it's just fatty and slimy and it rots. This will just dry out and then you just vacuum it. So we have a good amount here. The next thing is we would need a jar. I use mason jars. So there are different, I think I have it even on my slide. There are different ways to do. I have it on my slides. No. There are different ways to make the fermentation. You have it on the other slide, so that's unfortunate. So you heard of, or you saw, have seen the fermentation crock pot, maybe, where it has a weight. That's really fancy, but I was never that fancy. I just use a mason jar. And of course, even for the mason jars, they have fermentation lids. So, because the most important is the beneficial bacteria, they don't want the air.
Yeah.
So,
My mom had a jar,
yeah.
and then she had something like every day she would squeeze it, and it would like, you know,
Bubbles come up?
bubble, and it would release it, and it would keep it fermented.
Yeah. So I'll do it really, really simple with just a mason jar, and I'll show you, but you definitely are free to get the fancy stuff, and then we'll also tell you how to do that. But I'll just show you my simple version where you don't need a lot of tools, but you just need a little bit more attention to it. You have to take care and check it twice a day. So that's the other disadvantage. But I like it better, so I know, even if I have the fancy tools and I just leave it, I still want to check it and see how it's at and where it's at. So I just use a little bit more so I can fill the whole jar. I could also take more care to be not that messy, but I want to do it quick too. At home, I'm not that messy. If nobody watches, I'm not that messy. Okay. Yeah, and these gloves also you can wash. You can. I usually just rinse them in, with tap water, like hand wash them without soap, of course. But I think they also can be washed in the washing machine. And then they dry really well, so I'm really happy that I bought those and I'm not gonna get cut anymore. So you really wanna stuff it in. And then how they usually do sauerkraut, I mean they use a lot of salt. So what you wanna create is an environment without oxygen. And then you need some liquid. So everything is submerged under the surface of the liquid. So there's not so much oxygen coming in here. So how they did this, usually traditionally, they just massage the cabbage so much with salt, so the liquid, the juice of the cabbage comes out, and then you could create the liquid in the anaerobic environment. But I'm not doing this. Maybe we can even stuff a little bit more in. I don't do that. I just use water instead of getting the water out of the cabbage. I just use water and pour it over the cabbage. If you're stuffing it in like this, you also want to always put this in a tray after. So in case it gets bubbly, then you can, it will maybe get out some liquid and it'll ruin your counter or get messy. So I always put it in a tray and then, okay, so we stuffed it in, and then, so I have a version without salt at all. So instead of salt, I would use powdered celery, or I would use celery by itself, and then mix it with water, and then pour it over in the jar. But if you do it the first time, so I realized actually if I do it completely salt-free, then it doesn't keep that well. And maybe if you do it the first time, it might not work well for you. Because what I do is, when I already have a ready, a finished sauerkraut, then I have the sauerkraut juice, because that's what's left. And then here I have already the beneficial bacteria, a lot of them in, because they multiply while they're eating the sauerkraut. So this is already aged and lots of lactobacteria in here. So I would pour a little bit in my next batch. I mean, you would never do that with fresh food. You would never mix old food with fresh food. But here's something different. We want this to get spoiled, so to speak. Yes?
The celery that's grown up, did you make it yourself or did you find it somewhere?
I did make it myself.
I've never seen like anywhere to purchase that. Have you?
I never tried buying it,
Yeah.
but I would assume you can buy it.
Yeah. I'll
It's
have to look.
actually really simple. You just chop the celery, like in little pieces like this, like these little pieces, and then I dry it.
Do you dry it in the oven or just go?
You can dry it in the dehydrator. Well, I have a dehydrator. You can dry it in the sun. You can dry it on your radiator, maybe in the winter. Or you could also dry it in the oven if you want to keep it raw. Because I forgot to mention, I'm 100% raw vegan, so I don't eat any cooked food. I eat fermented food still. So, yeah. So I wouldn't cook it or bake it. Also, if you bake it, I'm pretty sure the taste
Yeah.
changes. Yeah, but you can dry in your oven too. You leave it open a little bit on the low setting. So, and then if it's dry, completely dry, I would put it in a dry blender and then just powder it. So, okay. So where did I? Off here. So I have this old food which I mix with my fresh food because I want this to get spoiled. So I know this is a good culture that I.
How do we make that? How do we make that?
Well, you make it with this here. So first you start with your cabbage, and it will ferment even without the starter. Or you could also even put a probiotic in there, like that you buy somewhere. But it will, if it's an organic cabbage, and you also use distilled water, not tap water, because the chlorine will kill the bacteria, then it will also ferment by itself, because the cabbage already has the bacteria. But it's just a little bit harder. It is just much easier if you put some more bacteria in there that are already alive and ready to eat this. These bacteria on the cabbage, they need to be woken up, so to speak. I mean, they're still sleeping on here, and then until they find out, oh, there's actually cabbage and we can eat it. It'll take some time. They know it already. So I'm gonna put something in here. but you don't have to necessarily. But if you have that ready, if the first time you make it and you have it ready, then I definitely would save the liquid for your next batches. Because also you increase the diversity. So this time, like last year, I had this bacteria on my cabbage. So I have it in here. Then the next week I had different bacteria. I have it in here. So every time I actually bring the bacteria from last year on here. So I have a lot more diversity, which is great. We want as much dirt in here as possible. We create the environment that only the good ones will grow. So that's our responsibility. But whatever goes in there, I don't really care. I mean, I create the environment. So I have something here that's not allowed at True North.
We didn't see anything.
You didn't see anything, but everyone saw it.
We didn't see anything.
But it's okay. I mean, salt is not your, I mean, the processed food, it just has too much salt and also artificial salt. This is Himalayan salt and it's natural salt. I mean, salt water. You can also use salt water really for that. But I'm not doing it like traditionally where I put so much salt in. What I use for a half-gallon jar is really 1 teaspoon. Oh, that's. Yeah, I would not. This is actually not small enough. Yeah, it goes to 1 teaspoon and a little bit less. I think this is then half a teaspoon. No, that looks more like a. Well, I'll use 1 teaspoon, but actually, for this half-gallon jar, I use 1/4 teaspoon.
Could you use 0 milk, or do you have to have some salt?
You can use 0 and you can use the celery,
Yeah.
but it might not work well. So with the salt, it's really safe. Usually, I don't know why, because I don't even put a lot of salt in. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's some kind of trace mineral that they like. So I'm not really sure why that is, but so I only have 1 teaspoon here, but I don't know how to do it. Just take half of it, 1/4. I really don't need a lot of salt. It's maybe 1/4 teaspoon to a half teaspoon, really not much more. Yeah, that's about 1/4 teaspoon. And that's pretty much all. That's not a lot. I would use also the celery salt, but I figured also that it doesn't keep well in the fridge either. So it just keeps much better if I just put a little bit of salt. And I don't think that's super unhealthy. Or do you think that makes it unhealthy now? You shouldn't eat processed foods. So, and then I would just pour water on top. Distilled water or filtered water or spring water, something natural without the chlorine. What would also help if your tap water only has the chlorine, boiling would also help to get the chlorine out because it's volatile. And the next thing, just press it down a little bit. So you see that the cabbage is under the water surface or the liquid surface here. Then it will expand a little bit. Maybe you don't make it that full like I do, because it will expand a little bit. So that's why I always keep it in a tray. I want to make it as full as possible. That's why I always keep it in a tray. If you don't make it that full, it's safer, so it will not splash out of the jar. And the next thing is I just put a lid on, but not tight. Just cover it. You can also use a wrap plastic wrap with a rubber band, and then just don't, but not completely tight, because it will, while the bacteria grow, they will develop gas, and it can burst your jar. Yeah, and that's pretty much it with the sauerkraut. Any questions?
Do you eat that for a long time? Do you?
Oh yeah,
Every
if
day
it's, so usually since my culture is so powerful already, it'll take me maybe 1 or 2 days, depending on the temperature, and that's already fermented. So this one here, I actually started yesterday night, but it is a little bit cooler these days, so so I started with red cabbage, and so twice a day I have to check it because it needs to stay under the surface and it will expand and come up. So I use a spoon and then I'll press it down. So this one I started yesterday night, so twice a day I'll just check it, I press it down. What also will happen if the gas develops carbon dioxide, which actually replaces the oxygen, and it's heavier than oxygen, so it will actually stay on your surface. So if you press it down and the bubbles come up, unless you just blow on it, but actually it will have a layer of carbon dioxide on top of it, and then I'll just leave it like this. You could also get the fermentation lids for mason jars, and then it's a little bit more safer, and also the weight that you put on top of that, so that will make the fermentation also safer. But I don't use these tools really. I'd rather check it twice a day and then I'll take care of it. Cabbage is really easy to ferment. But there are other vegetables that you can ferment, like cauliflower is pretty good too. Cucumbers is a little bit more tricky. They can develop more mold sometimes, so you want to avoid that. With cabbage, I never experienced that. Here I have hot peppers, and I fermented them. So I just sliced them and put them, also press them in the jar, then add a little bit, either the salt. Here I would only use 1/8 of a teaspoon salt, and a little bit of my really strong culture, then water till it's all submerged. And yeah, that's my hot pepper. Well, usually when I make a sauce, like a Tabasco sauce, I can also put the whole jar in my blender, then blend it up, and I have a hot Tabasco sauce that's also preserved pretty well. So if this is ready fermented, you would keep it in the fridge. So ready fermented means it doesn't develop any gas, and it's also sour. It needs to turn sour. If it's not sour, it's not safe to eat. Don't eat it. Yeah, but this is sour and really, really spicy if you want to try it. Since I used hot peppers, you can also use half and half, peppers and hot peppers, or only peppers. But I find also it's safer, or it's really easy when it has the heat in it to ferment instead of just peppers. Yeah, so you would close it, because then the gas there will no more gas develop if it's ready, and it will be sour. And then you can close the lid tightly and then put it in your fridge. And it's preserved for, I don't know for how long, but I had sauerkraut for a year or more in the fridge, and it was still good to eat. But I mean, it's already spoiled. I mean, it cannot get worse than sauerkraut, you know. And then the bacteria in the fridge, they're still alive. They just don't move anymore because it's too cold for them. They don't have body temperature like we do. They're just dependent on the environment. If the environment is cold, then they can't move then. Okay, so, but what I do with sauerkraut, what I really like to do is coleslaw. I don't have ready I don't have finished sauerkraut, so we're just gonna make that without sauerkraut, like coleslaw. There's a way to make sauerkraut, coleslaw without sauerkraut, of course. You can use cabbage as well, slice it really fine, but I don't really like raw cabbage too much. I will just use Napa cabbage or bok choy, and then I'll slice it really fine. And I also need a bowl. I'm just gonna slice this fine, like don't want this anymore. Yeah, and this is also the dish, coleslaw, for people that really think like, no way I'm gonna make sauerkraut, it sounds disgusting, I don't want it. You know, you don't have to use the sauerkraut for coleslaw, you can also make that without. The good thing with the sauerkraut and the sauerkraut juice, it's sour already. So you don't necessarily need vinegar or lemon juice or anything to make your coleslaw a little bit more tastier. You just can use the sauerkraut, and maybe you make the dressing for the coleslaw with the sauerkraut juice. It's one way to use the juice. Either I drink it, or I usually drink it, but you can make your dressings with it too, or just pour it over your salad, like vinegar, or in your soups as well. It really goes well in a soup. If you have a soup and then you just pour a little bit of sauerkraut and the juice in there, in your soup, that's pretty good too. Making my dinner now, unless you eat it all. I also didn't pre-prepare anything, just to show you how fast this is actually. It doesn't take a lot of time to prepare food. I have here carrots. They are peeled, but I would prefer not to peel them if they are organic. If they're not organic, I wouldn't even buy them really. But I would like to eat the peel of the carrot because they come from the soil and they have these little cracks. They have a lot of good bacteria too from the soil, especially the ones that make B12 if the soil is healthy. Of course, they shouldn't be super dirty and sandy. I mean, I would just wash them, but definitely the peel has these cracks. So you're not gonna wash these carrots so thoroughly that you get rid of all the bacteria. And then I'll use a grater. I like this one pretty much, and then I just grate them. Oh. Also, these gloves are really handy for the grater. Yeah, I would have used Napa cabbage, but they only had bok choy. I'm happy that they had bok choy. I would just use a green lettuce, something. Or my sauerkraut is ready, but I don't have it. I think Napa cabbage, if you don't use the fermented sauerkraut, I think Napa cabbage is the best you can use instead. Or, of course, if you like the cabbage raw. I think it's a little bit tough to eat raw. So what I do with the cabbage, I let the bacteria digest it first, and then I eat it. So I don't create all the gas that they create in the jar, you know. if you're not used to sauerkraut and fermented foods or the large amount of bacteria that's in there, then it can upset your stomach. If new bacteria come in there and then they get implemented and fight the others off, and you might feel sick if you're not used to that or if you have a problem. The funny thing is, if you have a problem and you make something right for you, then you might have a bigger problem, or you might feel worse at first until you feel well. And this is really tricky because people might get scared and they think, oh, I did something wrong and it's not good for me. But sometimes you have to go through it. True healing sometimes hurts really well, really badly, But I don't know. It could also be that you damage yourself. But I mean, it's always a risk. Life is risky. You have 2 carrots here. I don't know if this is too. Yeah, I really love these gloves. I can make it so fast. And I'm super safe.
I would be sorry. I have to come in and make some noise.
Oh, sure. I didn't even start with the noise.
What?
Alright,
Sorry.
no worries. Okay, now I have 2 carrots and that's about, what's that? The bok choy, finely sliced. Just mix it up a little bit. Now, you can just pour lemon juice on that, and that will already be a good dish. I like also parsley and herbs. I don't use a lot of spices, really. I don't use garlic and onions so much. I like to use fresh herbs. Parsley is super, super rich in vitamin K as well. So if you eat that and the sauerkraut and then the bacteria turn this into K2, so you're all set then. Okay, but we're also going to make a dressing for that, a creamy dressing. You can leave it not creamy if you're concerned about the fat. You can just put lemon juice, parsley, and then any kind of herbs and spices that you like. But we're gonna make a creamy sauce, so a dressing with that. So I like to use celery a lot for my dressings because it gives a lot of flavor. You don't prepare with salt. And the salt really, I only use for the sauerkraut. I never prepare my food with salt because it already tastes so good without salt too. Which you can use instead of salt. Definitely celery is pretty good, and then lemon juice. So if we had ready or finished sauerkraut, we could also use the juice from the sauerkraut, which is also sour. But we can also do it without, so we use lemons. Smells really good, huh? And we need to, I think I'll take two. I don't know. I think for this 2 lemons should not be too much. It really always depends on your lemon, so you might be more careful than I am, and then put 1 in first, and then you can always taste it. And then for the creaminess, I soak some sunflower seeds in water overnight, and I rinse them and wash them, and then I drain them, so they are really nice soaked and washed and clean. I like them that way better because they they are much more better digestible without the chemicals, well, the natural chemicals on the nut that preserve them, and they can upset our stomach a little bit. So I always like to soak my nuts and seeds. Except for hemp seeds, they're whole usually, so I will eat them just like that. And then I just put them in here. And then another thing I really like these days too, which vegans especially you should be careful of getting enough, is omega-3s. So I have chia seeds here, and I also soak them overnight. And probably this was this is 1 cup. That was a quarter of a cup dry chia seeds, and then I put probably three times that amount of water in there. But you have to just pour a little bit of water in there and then check it a little bit later and see if it all is as like a gel and not any clumps in here. And then you can actually store that in the fridge then for maybe 2-3 days. And then you can always put a spoon out of it. Of course, you could also use dry chia seeds in here because it blends it all up. But I like to soak them also in water. It just brings the seed alive, and then the enzymes get active. Some other reactions happen in here that are beneficial. So they even start to sprout a little bit. So yeah, I really like that. So we can put. It doesn't really matter how much you put in here. You can either use chia seeds or flax seeds for your omega-3s. The only thing, flax seeds have a little bit more of a stronger taste, and chia actually really doesn't have a lot of taste. The other thing is, which is nice, it makes your dressing a little bit more creamy or sticky. So I put the half of it in here. Maybe you can even put more. Why not? Yeah, it doesn't really matter how much you put in there. And then I wonder if this is already enough liquid. So if it's not liquid enough, maybe we'll put 1 tomato in here. I don't really like putting water in my dressings because it takes away the taste, and if I don't use any salt. If I want to make my dressing a little bit more liquid or more runny, then I'll just use vegetables that have high water content, like tomatoes or cucumber. You can put in. Put a tomato in here, and then you can just blend it up. Anything else I want to? Oh, I wanted to add parsley, but I don't do it now. Unless you want this to turn really, really green. But I actually wanted to have a lighter color first. So let's see. And then I just pulse it in at lower rounds per minute. Okay, and then we'll pulse it a little bit in here at lower settings. So I actually chopped it, and I saved my time chopping it with the knife. But I didn't blend it really well in, so it all turns green. So it's like chopped.
How much of the sunflower seeds did you put in there? The sunflower seeds, how much did you put in?
Oh, how much? That's a good question. I actually had half a cup of dry. Yeah. Half a cup of dry will, if you soak in the water, will extend to a little bit more. But it was half a cup of dry one. And yeah, we just pour it over. I mean, of course you can put in garlic if you like garlic or onions or anything. I would chop the onions, I think, too. Yeah, any spice that you like. I like it a little bit more simple, so. And I also want to show you how that unless you're water fasting or you don't want to eat it. But even if it's simple, it can taste pretty well. Okay, just pouring this over here. And then you just mix it up. Uh-oh. Ooh. Okay. It's getting even more messy here. That's always my problem. My bowls are always too small. No matter how big they are.
It looks really good. It smells really good.
Yeah, it's all fresh ingredients.
Oh yeah.
So is this. Yeah, you want to mix it really nicely. Okay. Who's water fasting? Just one person?
Yeah.
Well, everyone.
You got the short straw today.
Everyone else can try it if you're concerned about germs. If you're concerned about germs.
Oh, it smells wonderful.
Busy.
Oh, it's
You can sniff it if you want.
oh yeah. I will. She will. I'll do stuff. I love it. It's therapeutic for me.
Yeah, for me too. When I was water fasting, I wanted to
Look at everything.
watch people eat or
Yeah.
even me. Yeah.
I like to smell it, and I enjoy like eating your when you're eating.
Yeah. So yeah, as I said, you can of course add more spices in here. But I like to keep it simple. I just have parsley. You can also use cilantro. It's pretty good, I think. Yeah, we're done. So thank you for listening and watching. If you want to try it, you can of course at your own risk. So.